Hey everyone, welcome to the Mighty Books Podcast, where we sit down and chat with mighty authors about their book's message, writing successes, struggles, and other relevant authorship topics. I'm your host, Ryan M. Oliver, author of the Beasts of Men and Gods series. Now let's get started on today's chat. On this episode of the Mighty Books Podcast, our featured author is Susan Friedmann. For over 30 years, Susan Friedmann, CSP, a certified speaking professional, has traveled the world training and coaching entrepreneurs how to wipe out sameness and add vitality and differentiation to their marketing. Through her company, Aviva Publishing, she's guided hundreds of nonfiction authors to use their books to become a recognized expert authority in their field. Susan's written 17 books and sold over 500,000 copies of her first book. Her international bestsellers include Meeting and Event Planning for Dummies and Riches in Niches, How to Make It Big in a Small Market. She also hosts the award-winning podcast, Book Marketing Mentors. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mighty Books Podcast. Today, we have Susan Friedmann. Susan, how are you doing today?
I'm excellent, Ryan. It's so good to be here with you.
I'm really glad you took some time out of your busy schedule to join me. I'm excited to chat about your book, which brings me my first question is, what is the title of your book?
Okay, well, let's start at the very beginning. The one that I know that we're talking about most today is Riches in Niches, How to Make It Big in a Small Market. And it's one of 17 books that I've actually written. But it's one I think I'm most proud of. So I've got two, and we'll talk about the other one later on. But this one particularly, what I did with this book, Ryan, was I encompassed 25 years of expertise and boiled it down to 7 separate strategies that I go through in the book.
Perusing your book and reading a book, I've definitely noticed that is the meat of most of this book. That is for sure. So what exactly inspired you to write the book? So I think it came out in about 2007.
It did. It did. And it's still selling very well. Thank goodness.
That's great.
And I think the major reason for that success is, well, 2 things. One, it's very evergreen material, and that is it's timeless. So even though I wrote it in 2007, or it was published in 2007, in fact, the material is still relevant today. And that is a very, very important aspect, especially for your listeners who are nonfiction authors. Obviously, fiction, a story is a story, and that can last generations, which I truly admire people who can write fiction, and I know you do it so well, Ryan.
Well, thank you. So about your book, you dive deep into the niche, or the niche, if you will, of business and marketing. What is your niche exactly? What was the one thing that you capitalized on, your expertise?
So my niche was the trade show industry. I was training exhibitors how to be successful at trade shows, which is a very interesting niche or niche market. And we'll vacillate between those 2 ways of pronouncing it, Ryan. I'm very much of a Francophile, and since niche is a French word, and for the book, Riches in Niches rhymes better than Riches in Niches.
Yes, it does. It does.
So what I found working in that industry over 25 years, Ryan, was that without realizing it, I had positioned myself from being a total unknown to being the go-to expert in the trade show training environment. And I thought, well, hey, I wonder what I did duplicable for any entrepreneur. And going through my years of experience, realizing that there were 7 specific strategies that I used, and that's what I outlined in the book. And, when I realized that this was something that could be saleable, I actually talked to an editor of a traditional publishing house.
Sure.
And I said, is there something in this? What do you think? And she said, I love it. She said, absolutely. And so that's when I started looking for a literary agent to represent me, to go to find a publisher who would be interested in this book.
Yeah.
And Career Press, as it was known then, was interested, and they ended up publishing it. So I was very fortunate. I have 4 books that have been traditionally published, and everything else that I've written is through my own publishing company, Aviva Publishing. And you know that well, Ryan, since you published through Aviva Publishing.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. That's what I've heard from several business people I've talked to, is taking that. People don't understand sometimes that they've got the expertise and the know-how in them. They just have to kind of sit down and ruminate on it eventually and pull it out of them and put it into words. And eventually you do have something to take away, and a usable tool that, like you said, is timeless.
Absolutely. And often, well, first of all, when authors come to me and say, would I publish their book? I ask them 2 questions. One is, who is the book for? And what do you want the book to do for you? So those are 2 pertinent questions. And often when I ask the question, who is the book for? The answer that I get is everyone.
For everyone? Oh, okay.
Yes. That's the answer that I often get.
Oh, okay.
Is that my book is for everyone. And I'm like, yes, that could be possible. However, marketing to everyone is almost impossible.
Yes.
In fact, I would say it's impossible. Not even the big of the big, the Procter and Gambles of this world even try to do that. So, as a little entrepreneur, a solopreneur, a nichepreneur, whatever you want to call yourself, the fact is, it's not something that I would recommend. And so then we start looking at, well, who is your market? Who's your target? Who's your niche? This is where the niche comes in. And often it goes back to your own expertise. Now, you were saying to me, you were looking at potentially writing a nonfiction book, because I know you specialize in fiction. You're a great storyteller, which I am in awe of, by the way, because that's not something that I feel more challenged when it comes to the story aspect. Any event, you were saying you're not sure who your niche would be. And what you and I would look at would be potentially looking at your expertise, because that's what you know well, and what aspect of your expertise would be helpful to pass on to others in that industry, in that field.
Yes.
And so that's how we look at it.
Okay. Well, and actually, I'll point out in the book, it's pretty early on, there is actually a segment where you ask the reader the questions like, hey, maybe you are already a nichepreneur. I'm going to have a hard time saying that.
That's okay. You did very well.
Thank you. You've got a little quiz there. It says, like, if you answer yes to 7 of these 10 questions, you've already got a niche. You just need to capitalize on it. And then even goes on and talk about like your resume, not just like, you're trying to find a job resume, a whole life long skill set resume. Like, what did you do right from when you were a kid all the way up to current day? And then what skills did you pull out of those jobs or experiences? And if you find multiple that match, like, that might be your niche, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah. You never quite know exactly, but what I found more often than not, it comes back down to your workplace. Where have you spent most of your work time?
Mm-hmm.
And for you, you're in, what was it, the health and safety environment?
Yeah, I'm an educator still. I was a teacher before for many years, and then moved to the industrial industry, being an electrician, and then back into being a teacher again. So kind of combined the two. So
I'm sure if we started digging, we'd find some gems in terms of what you're good at.
yes.
And I've got a formula, I call it the GEL formula, and it's in the book. And it's GEL, and the G stands for you want to look for a growth industry.
Mm-hmm.
So that is obviously, as it says, it's an industry that is growing. Pharmaceuticals, food and beverage, tourism, even though I know we've had our pandemic, but people are rushing back into tourism, and ecotourism and biotech. All these are growth industries.
Right.
And then the E stands for your expertise. That's where, what we've just been talking about. So what is your expertise? So your growth, a growth industry, using your expertise. And the L is the most important word, and that is love. What do you love doing? You have absolutely got to be passionate about what it is that you want to spend your time either writing about, teaching, coaching, speaking. And this is primary, because if you're not in love with what you're doing and what you're saying, hey, why should anybody else be?
Yeah, and people can understand that. People can definitely see that. As someone who has taught things that I've enjoyed, and I'm teaching things that I'm learning to understand. It's a lot of more technical aspect of things, not necessarily the most riveting, topics that I'm teaching now, but I have to come across as I, enjoy them to some degree. You have to have energy with it. People will literally just nod off if they see that you're just kind of speaking, not really. You're just a talking head.
Exactly. And this is where your storytelling expertise will come into play, because you could take a boring subject and wrap a story around it. And guess what? People will remember that.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do every day. Go in and learn some new stories that have to do with it. Like I said, make a boring topic a little more engaging.
Exactly. And it can be something simple. So you start off with whatever the boring subject might be and say, well, how can this relate? Or you start off with a story and then pull in that expertise, that piece of knowledge that you want somebody to have.
Yeah. And I've noticed, with at least from my standpoint, I do a lot better storytelling with writing, because you can digest and chew on the words a little bit. When you're telling a story, you almost have to have it rehearsed prior, and so telling the story multiple times helps you kind of weed out the bumps in the road, smooth it out a little bit, so that people can digest it better.
Exactly.
It takes time. It's a craft. It takes time.
Oh my goodness. And that's why I'm in awe of what you do, because I'm a great, I'll give you the 10 tips to do this and the 25 ways to do that.
Right.
However, adding the story component to it sometimes, as I said, can get a little bit challenging for me.
Right. All right. So how has being an entrepreneur worked out, like the triumphs of being an entrepreneur? I mean, you've already talked about that. You've already got some good, it's selling still, the book's selling still, but you're a businesswoman. So, I mean, how has that affected your business?
So the whole aspect of writing a book in the first place, especially in the nonfiction environment, is that it shows credibility and expertise in an area. And that's really important, because when you do write a nonfiction book, it's not about selling books. It's about selling your expertise. You're not going to get rich on selling books.
No, you're not.
Unfortunately, often people think, oh, I've written a book, I'll post it on Amazon, and then I just have to sit back and the money is going to come flooding in and Oprah's going to call me. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen.
What a beautiful dream.
It's a beautiful dream.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It is a beautiful dream. I had a mentor once who said it takes 15 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah. I've
So
heard
yes,
20.
so think about that.
Yeah.
So it gives you credibility.
Yeah.
Now, when you write a nonfiction book, you're looking to build that credibility to open doors and revenue generating doors. And those can be speaking, training, coaching. All of those are going to make you a lot more money than selling books in onesies and twosies. Now, my first book, which was a very sexy title, Exhibiting at Trade Shows, Tips and Techniques for Success. And I sold 500,000 copies of that book.
Wow.
To one company.
Oh, okay. Okay. Fabulous. That's just still incredible.
And how did I do that? I did that through being an expert in the field, being seen as an expert, having built relationships in the field that I specialized in, which was trade show training. And so I looked for companies or a company who would be interested in my material to potentially give to their clients. And I found one. And it was awesome. One of the manufacturers of portable exhibit. So they and I had the same audience in common. And that was really important.
That's impressive.
So it's matching that. So there are different sponsorship opportunities. Many of my authors have got sponsorship deals with people. And yes, but it's when you've got the same audience or an audience that a company with deep pockets is interested in, and they want to be aligned with you.
That is an incredible triumph. That really is. That is super cool. I need to look into some more of those. I'm not doing trade shows, but I mean, like you said, it boils down to like the strategies or timeless information. And if it's organized in a way I can relate to it, or I can take and use it as a tool, you're going to find useful things in most books anyway, especially obviously nonfiction.
So an interesting coup that has just happened is that 20 years ago, I wrote a book called Meeting and Event Planning for Dummies, and it was one of the Dummies series books. Okay. And again, that was written with a very evergreen style. Timeless, much of it timeless, common sense information, and which is a Dummies series book is just right for me because they want tips. They don't necessarily want the stories. They want a little sense of humor, but that's about it. They just want information. So they cover a subject, but they cover it from a macro perspective. And then if you want to delve deeper into any aspect of that, more of a micro approach, then you would go and seek out other books. And that's the objective there. Okay. So in any event, a few weeks ago, Wiley, who publishes the Dummies series, came back to me and said, your book has been selling so well over the last 20 years. However, there's been several, different technologies that have grown up in the time. True. So it could do with a little bit of updating. Would I like to update it? Well, of course, I jumped at that. And so now we're in the process of updating the book with a new technology, because obviously now events are hybrid as well as virtual. So much has changed even in the last, obviously, couple of years since we've been homebound for so much of the time.
Mhm.
Virtual has just absolutely skyrocketed,
Right.
virtual events. And now we're going back into being in person. However, there's this whole component of hybrid events as well that has transpired.
Yeah, that is the key too, is you want that timeless information, but you want to stay up with the times, because the tools can change, they can evolve, and you want to be able to, exploit that the best
Very
ability.
much so.
You need to.
Very much so.
A wrench works really well, but a drill battery operated drill works really well. You know what I mean? So just from an industrial background, a little bit there.
But it was a great example.
Well, thank you.
I love that. I might even use that. So thank you for
that. Go for it. I use a lot of tools and electrical background, so I use a lot of the analogies with industrial grade or construction and all that fun stuff. So,
well, having a toolbox
yep.
is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you need a hammer for certain jobs and a spanner or a wrench for other jobs. So yes, I use that a little bit, but just surface, because I don't know enough about it, but I use it as a toolbox to make examples as well, just like you said.
Yep, my wife does too. As a first grade teacher, she does it all the time. She uses the toolbox analogy quite often, so it is not unused, that's for sure. All right, let's see. So you said you own your own publishing, work and own your own publishing company. What is that like?
So that's really interesting, and I'll tell you the story about how it got started, because as I mentioned earlier, that my niche was exhibiting at trade shows and actually training the exhibitors who exhibited trade shows. That was my niche market. And I wanted to publish a book. Now, I did have a traditional publisher do the exhibiting at trade shows book, which I was rejected 3 times, but then they eventually sort of took a chance with me. And as I said, we sold 500,000 copies of the book. So they took a very good chance on me.
Mm-hmm.
However, after that, it was really difficult. And I thought, well, how about publishing my own stuff? If other people don't want to publish me, let me publish my own stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's really how I got started. Mm-hmm. And I had no intention of publishing anybody else's. However, and I know you've had Patrick Snow on your podcast in the past, and Patrick came to me one day. I met him at a National Speakers Association workshop. It was in Portland, Oregon. And he said to me, "How would you like to publish my book?" And I was like, I'd never even thought about that idea of publishing somebody else's work. And I thought, well, why not?
Yeah.
And he was so happy with that. And after that, he started his own author coaching program. Mm-hmm. And I know you were a student of his. And he now sends people to Aviva Publishing to publish their authors, his author's work.
Yeah.
Or his client's work. That's a better way to phrase it.
Right.
And I'm very grateful to him. And now many different book coaches send their clients to Aviva Publishing. And Aviva Publishing is what's known as a hybrid publisher in the publishing industry. Mm-hmm. There are 3 types of publishing. There's self-publishing, which is how I started Aviva Publishing. And then there's hybrid, which is now what Aviva Publishing is. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. And then there's traditional publishing, which is what most people know, and the big Simon & Schuster and Wiley and Random House. These are the big guys in the industry.
Right. And
Penguin. So these are names I'm sure your listeners know, and they've probably got books on their bookshelf that are that have been published by these publishers.
Right. Right.
So those are the 3 types. And what I created with Aviva is an umbrella whereby you are self-published under the Aviva Publishing And we're in New York, so
Mhm.
which is where most of the big publishing houses are. In fact, all of them are there.
Mhm.
And you come as a self-published author and you get branded as under the Aviva Publishing banner.
Right.
And it helps authors. I mean, we've been in business now 30 years. We've published over 500 titles,
Wow.
and it's a model that works. Many hybrids work that they charge you a large fee. They do all the editing, all the cover design, whereas what we do is we refer you to editors, we refer you to designers, and you work with those people directly. So you have far more control over the whole process, and it's your book, and you make all the profit from the book, whereas some hybrid, the model is that you buy the book back from them at a certain cost.
Right.
So there are different elements involved in this. We try and make it as simple as possible and allow you to give you the control to publish your own work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then having that control helps you just with your future, what your future looks like for that book. No one is telling you where it needs to go. They can give you suggestions and they can give you a lot of recommendations, but they're not telling you you need to go here. There's no contract, which is fabulous. And that it makes people a lot more comfortable to, give their life's work over to somebody to, put in their hands. And it's like, well, you come with us, and that's a lot more comfortable that way. I definitely feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, and so many authors say, oh, well, I want to be traditionally published, which has a lot of cachet attached to it, obviously. Yeah. And I will admit that, yes, I love being published by Wiley, and I love being published by Career Press. And I've got a Penguin book as well. So it's like, yes, it's nice. However, if I want copies of those books, I have to buy them at a 60%. I buy them at 60% of the retail price, which is quite high. And then I've got to buy a certain number of books, a case of books. So I and the shipping. So all of that gets very, very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon has been a godsend to many authors.
Yes.
There are lots of pros and cons. I said earlier the fact that people think that, hey, I'm going to post my book on Amazon and then I just need to sit back and wait for the money to come flooding in.
Yeah.
Amazon isn't merely a shop window. You've put your book in Amazon's shop window.
Right.
And just like any store, you have to bring people to that store to buy it, the product.
Yes.
And so it's your responsibility to bring people to the Amazon store if you want to sell your book. I mean, you're going to ask me where people can get a hold of Riches and Niches or any of my books. And I'm going to say, go to Amazon.
Yeah.
It's easiest. I don't have to deal with it.
It is a marketplace.
Well, they've turned publishing on its head. I mean, they have really challenged all the major publishers who, were trotting along in their own merry way. They've been doing the same thing for years, and it worked well. Their formula worked well. Here comes Amazon with ebooks and with the opportunity for any Tom, Dick, and Harry to have a work published. Now, because of that, self-publishing has gotten a bit of a bad rap because so much bad stuff is out there, which is very unfortunate. And that means that often people think that a self-published book is not a real book. Hence, publishing, for instance, through a hybrid such as Aviva Publishing helps because you're published by a publishing company. So
Exactly.
that really gives you more of a stance that you just say to people, hey, I'm published by Aviva Publishing out of New York, which is exactly what you do, I
Mhm.
hope.
It is. Oh yeah. I plan on all my future works are going to come through you. So come through Aviva. I'm not
Thank you.
deviating at all. I'm a very one trick pony kind of guy. I learned one way to do it. Nah, I'm going to stick with it. It's tried and true. If I haven't gotten burned and everyone's trusting each other, we're going to keep that relationship, and I will keep promoting Aviva until the day I die, essentially.
Oh, well, thank you.
My
That's
pleasure.
very touching. I
Yeah, I
appreciate that.
no problem. Yeah, I that and other individuals who work and associate with you, I just speak the world to. So,
I know we've got editors. You work
mhm.
with Tyler, I think, and then cover
Yes,
designers. I mean, these are people we've worked together for over 20 plus years.
yeah,
We know each other's work really, really well.
yeah,
And we know the quality of the work. And that's so important as well, because when I recommend somebody a resource, I want to know that I'm making a recommendation that is good, because it's my head on the line.
exactly. Mhm.
It's like, okay, my reputation here, because I'm making that recommendation, you think, well, I trust Susan, therefore I know this is going to be good.
Yeah.
Well, if it doesn't work out that way, hey, they're going to say, hey, why Susan's recommending somebody that isn't good? I mean, which obviously we don't want to do.
No, you
We don't
and
do.
yeah,
We don't do.
you don't do. No, you don't. You definitely don't do. And then also just having that backing of, yes, I have, Aviva is my publisher. It's like that elevates the book itself. It's like it has been approved by experts in their field, that it is good for the reader. It's quality. It is
Well, and
something.
I look at your cover. I
Mm.
mean, you've gone to the trouble, you've invested in your book.
Oh yeah.
And that's a different approach to traditional publishing, where you, the author, invests in the book. So
Mhm.
you pay for the editing, you pay for the cover design, and you have a say in that.
Yeah.
And there's one thing about covers, it's the packaging for the book. You have to absolutely be totally in love with your cover.
Oh
If
yeah.
you don't love your cover, I'm going to say that it's going to affect sales. And I've known this. I've seen it happen. I've seen people, admit to me that they said, I don't like my cover. I'm embarrassed by it. I don't even put it out and tell people about it.
That's awful. Yeah,
Isn't it?
and I love the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover. But how else do you make that snap decision to pick it up off the shelf, turn it around, and read the back? It's by how it
Yes, I
looks.
think that saying doesn't apply in this situation.
Yeah, it does not. Not to books.
It
To people,
definitely
it
does
does,
not.
but not to books.
Yes, not
Not,
to books.
not interesting.
However, there's some lousy covers out there, and the book's been phenomenal. And again, depending
Right.
on who publishes it and the promotion, the marketing that's been done behind it,
Right.
you can get away with some things.
Yeah.
But there have been some really disgusting. You look on Amazon, you can see some terrible work out there.
Yeah.
You know what's self-published.
You do, and that's the funny part, especially when you've been doing it for a while. I mean, I didn't really know until I started the process, and when I started looking at my book cover, and I was blown away when I first saw it. I absolutely adore. I can't wait to get the other ones done. That's a future. That's in the future. I looked at mine, and then I saw other people's who were self-published, and I'm like, more power to you if you can do everything yourself. But I'm not an expert in everything. I can write the stories. That's my expertise. I can't do all this other stuff. And you could tell that it was just not. There's just the fine details. The devil's in the details, and people will see that and go, well, yeah, it might be a good story, but I'm not interested because the cover is not doesn't grab you. So I mean, there's that always that aspect. There's always that factor.
Well, also, as an unknown in the
Yeah.
marketplace,
Mhm.
something's got to stand out.
Yes.
And if people don't know who you are, they may just pick the cover because, hey, this looks cool. I like this. I wonder what this is about.
Exactly. So that's a great transition. So standing out from the crowd is mentioned in your book. So in today's market, just like the Dummies books came back and said, "Hey, we want to update this. What is a good way to become visible in today's market?"
It's a matter of being a big fish in a small pond. And this is where the whole aspect of niche marketing, being a nichepreneur, which is a term I coined, somebody who specializes in niche market. It's not everybody who knows you. I was a quasi-celebrity in the exhibiting training environment. Anybody outside of that didn't know who the heck Susan Friedmann was, but they didn't need to because they didn't need what I had to offer. Yeah. However, the people who did need what I had to offer knew who I was, or they saw me enough times because I was out there in the media. I was in every single printed magazine because that's what was out there at the time. This is showing my age, that it was all about print media. Right. So every magazine, every publication that was in the exhibiting industry, I was in around the world. So people said, oh, you're everywhere. Well, I wasn't everywhere, but the perception I was everywhere is what I created. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow. So now you take that and you look at it in terms of social media and still the publications. I mean, there are still publications in every industry, but you want to look at niching. You also want to look at, instead of being on every single platform on social media, is being seen on one platform. And which platform should you use? The platform where your niche hangs out. Mm-hmm. Okay. So if they hang out on LinkedIn, that's where you need to be. If they hang out on Facebook, that's where you need to be. So you have to pick and choose where you want to hang out, because if you're a bit all over the place, you're just scattering your energy. Right. Rather than keeping it focused in one area and going narrow and deep, which is what I did. Is literally could I do within that narrow environment, going deep into that, which companies were interested in the same clients I was interested in. Yeah. How could I align with them? How could I network with them? How could they know me? How could they know my work? So you need to look at that strategically to be able to work out which is the right path for you, and you become credible, you become the content thought leader in that environment. And it means that you have to be putting out stuff that is relevant to the people in your industry to solve their challenges, because hopefully you're coming up with the solutions to their challenges, which is what makes you that thought leader, that expert in the industry. So not everybody has to know you. It's only the people who matter who need to know you. Yeah. Does that answer you? That was a long answer to a short question. That's a great question, or great answer. Great answer. Yeah, that's okay. That's a great answer. It's a big question, though. I mean, it really is. It's a short question, but it's a big question. It's not just about being visible on social media. It's about being what you can do for people. I mean, that's what it really is. It boils down to, what can you do for others? What can you elevate people? Can you move people from a 9-to-5 job to I'm an entrepreneur, I work for myself now? That's a big move. That's a big transition. There's a lot of aspects to that. Just like writing a book. That's a huge, it seems simple. Okay, go to the printer, have a bunch of text on there, and voila, you got yourself a book. But it takes years. It can take a lot of time. There's 100-something decisions plus that to make. And with becoming someone who's standing out and being known and being usable and as an asset, that takes time, and that takes a lot of work
takes a lot
I
of work.
know that one of the questions that you were interested in knowing is how long did it take to write my book?
Mm-hmm.
The Riches and Niches book we're talking about specifically. And I'm going to say that it took me 25 years of experience before I could write the book. So the book is filled with 25 years worth of experience. That's what I built up over the time. How long did it take me to write? A few months.
Right. Yeah, that's what the real big question is. There's an old, I'm pretty sure it's a joke, but it kind of swings to what we're talking about. An old boat, an old boat, like early 1900s boat, breaks down. The captain and the crew trying to figure out what's wrong with it. They cannot figure out why this thing won't turn on. So they call the old crusty guy who was there when the infancy of the boat. They call him up, say, "Hey, can you fix this thing?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So he comes down, takes a look. He stares at it for about 30 minutes. He takes a big wrench and just beats the living dickens out of it. They go, it's like, "Try it now." Turns it on, no problem. They go, "Wow." He goes, "Okay, you can just bill me, okay?" Like, okay. He sends a bill to the captain, and it says $5 for the wrench hit, and then $9,995 for my expertise.
Exactly.
You're
That's
paying for knowledge.
Exactly right. It's perfect. Yes.
You're paying for the knowledge.
You're paying for the knowledge. People often say, "How can you charge that?" Well, I can charge it because I'm sharing, as you rightly say, X number of years of expertise, that I've invested in myself. I've learned, the trials and tribulations of learning, the ups, the downs, the heartaches.
You're literally giving someone a roadmap. I mean, hey, I've been through this. Here you go. I've trudged through all the nasty, swampy places. This place is good dirt. You can walk on that. We've cut through here. We've given you the chat. We've given you a literal roadmap to making a niche in the market and being successful at it. That's what you're doing. And
we're sharing a lot of that now.
Time for money, money for time.
Sharing with you what I'm sharing. If I hadn't done a lot of this stuff myself, I hadn't experienced it, I hadn't written.
It's super important. So now I'm really interested. We won't go into all of them. Your 7 secrets, 7 strategies, or success strategies. I like the alliteration. Susan's 7 secret success strategies. I love alliteration. So I giggled a little bit when I saw that. I won't lie. So could you kind of speak on just a few of them? Let's start with the very top one, with just naming your business. How important is that? What goes into that?
I believe it's really important, especially when you're an unknown. So many people think, "Oh, I'm going to call myself, using my name, like Ryan Oliver Incorporated."
Right.
Great.
Yeah.
It means nothing. What does Ryan Oliver do?
Yeah.
It doesn't tell me what you do. I'm a firm believer in the fact that your business name needs to say what you do. So I went through several iterations of my name when I was in the trade show industry. I started off, I got really clever, and this is what people love to do. They get really clever about titles, and I called myself Diadem Communications.
Okay.
And a diadem, for listeners who are not familiar with the word, is that laurel wreath that, for instance, the Romans wore. It's a sign of distinction. Well, people don't know that word necessarily. And then the word communications. People thought I was in wireless and radio, and I was technical. They had no clue. It didn't relate to trade show. So then I went to Trade Show Success, which I thought, great name, which it really was, until somebody contacted me and said, "We have a magazine of that name. I'm issuing a cease and desist." Great.
It was so good. Someone else got to it first.
Was so good. Somebody else had taken it before me, and I had not done my homework on a name.
Yeah.
And then I went with the Trade Show Coach.
That
Does
works.
It say what I do? Absolutely. I'm a coach in the trade show environment. No ifs, ands, or buts about what that means. So that's what I ended up with. But it did take those iterations over several years, I'm going to say, because I didn't want to give up diadem communications, but I was like, when people said, well, what do you do?
Right.
Yeah, that's the big one, is like when people have to ask you what you do, it's like something's not working here.
You want it to almost be blunt.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah, this person does this. Perfect. I don't even have to look at the reviews or look at the description. I know exactly what they do. So it's like, like Pizza Hut. What do they do? Well, they sell pizza. Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, it's something real bare bone, I think there. So building your media muscle is the second strategy. How do you do that?
You want to fall in love with the media. You want the media to know who you are, but not the media in general, but the media specifically in your industry. So you look at the magazines and now what's online. Are there blogs? Are there certain influencers out there in that industry that you really want to be aligned with? You want content on platforms where you're going to be seen by the target audience you're interested in.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I was in every single exhibiting magazine in the world.
Wow.
And there were only about a dozen, because I was in such a niche industry.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for any industry. There are associations. There's an association for almost every single industry. So who is the association or associations? What kind of publication do they have? You just want to know everything there is to know about the media and the publications and what it is out there in print, now in podcasts, of course, YouTube, anything that you can be seen on, again, as I said, by the audience you want to be in front of.
Right.
And so that is really key, because the more you're seen, the more people, again, are going to say, well, I see you everywhere. I mean, that is such a compliment. If somebody says that to you, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But you want the right people to be saying that, obviously.
Yeah.
Not your family and friends.
Yeah. You want the traffic cops saying that necessarily.
Yeah.
You want those who's going to be doing business with you saying that. Yeah, you just want to get on the open stream there, and everyone, where the word gets out. Where the word gets out. You want to be there. You want to be the billboard, basically.
Exactly. But again, in your niche market. Doesn't matter, if your family and your friends don't know about you, they're not your audience. They're not your target. They're not going to spend thousands of dollars to hire you to speak or to train or to coach their people.
Nope. No, they will not. That's a fact. I want you to speak to one more, and then we're going to move on to some other cool questions. Let's see. Teaching, workshops, webinars, and more. What do you have to say about this one?
This is where you're going to make your money. Now, we talked about this earlier. Your books aren't going to make you money.
Right.
So you have to have something that will. And within Aviva Publishing, one of the aspects of the services that we offer is looking at how can an author build a business around the book. And the way to do that is to look for revenue generating opportunities. And the most common ones are speaking, training, coaching.
Right.
Those are the three biggies. And now, of course, whether it's in person, it's online, it's hybrid, it's all available.
Mm-hmm.
I love workshops because I'm a high content presenter. Keynote speeches, I'm not particularly interested in quite so much because I don't feel that's my audience. I like to have time with people.
Mm-hmm.
I like to be able to give content that people can take away, that they can use, that we can workshop this. So I'd rather have a 3-day event than necessarily have 20 or 40 minutes on a stage. But
well, and also, yeah, no, well, and to what you do as a entrepreneur with a particular niche, you're teaching a skill. I mean, really, when you think about it, you are teaching a skill. You can be motivated by, motivational speakers. I mean, Patrick Snow is a great inspirational speaker. He can speak. He can be a keynote speaker. I know several other individuals who are, leadership writers. They write about leadership, and they can speak. To me, that's broad. You can speak to the masses about it. But for you, you're learning a skill. People are learning a skill from you, particular skill. I'm going to refer back to my industrial time. We fix naval vessels. Cool. That's a broad spectrum. We can talk about safety to the masses, which is what I do. But when I was going to school to be an electrician, we talked to the electricians. I didn't need to know about the water systems. I didn't know how the boats ran electrically. That's what I needed to know. So they niched down to that. Take a group of 100 of us, cut it down into 10. You guys are now in charge of this particular thing. And we had to get together, have those deep conversations, understand the theory of it all, how it works, how to troubleshoot things. It was a skill set we were learning, not just a, overarching holistic conversation. It was a specific set of skills you're learning. So I agree with you on the webinars. I think that if I were ever to go into something where I'm speaking and coaching, it's going to be more in the niche area of the industry.
Yeah, and that's where you're going to be successful. And it's going to be so much easier for you to market yourself when you are targeting just a specific niche. And as we talked about earlier, the idea of going narrow and deep is far more effective than broad and wide.
Right. There is absolutely. The jack of all trades are needed, but having someone who is specific and expert in their field cannot be overstated either. I'm plain and simple. I'm not going to hire a carpenter to come work on my plumbing. Just how it goes, So you have done so well for yourself. I'm very impressed with. I mean, I've learned a little bit beforehand, learned more just during talking with you now. You've done so well in your career. What as a businesswoman, as an author, what does success look like to you now? Or are you already there? You're just reveling it and enjoying the heck out of it.
You never want to be there. It's like you're either ripening or you're rotting, as one of my mentors said. And I want to be ripening. I'm constantly looking at how can I change things? How can I improve things? Obviously, technology is changing all the time. So I've got to be ahead of the game, or at least with the game, and knowing what's happening out there. I look to give a lot of inspiration and motivation to my authors based on my expertise, and encourage them to do it within their expertise. So yes, I couldn't stop what I'm doing. And yes, successes are nice. However, that's just, you've accomplished one thing.
And move on.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it's like you can't be complacent about it.
I totally agree with you. Get busy learning, or get busy, I don't know, unlearning things.
As I say, either you're ripening or you're rotting.
I love that.
Prefer?
Yeah, I love that. Was it Shawshank Redemption, the movie? Get busy living or get busy dying. Kind of same thing with learning. In business, you're either growing or you're not growing.
Or you're not.
Yeah, you're getting thrown out.
And there's so many businesses out there, and you've got a lot of competition. And one thing is, in a niche market too, you can stand out and be the only game in town.
Yeah.
And when you're that, people are going to come to you.
Yeah, you've been a monopoly, and that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. So we'll kind of wrap up here in a few minutes. I have two more questions for you. I really want to get an answer from. So just if someone like myself who's looking into something like what you're doing, not necessarily trade shows, but a nichepreneur, what's one piece of advice for those individuals who are looking to branch out in their niche?
Is to look at that gel formula we talked about earlier. Look at a market that is growing. The E stands for your expertise. How can you use your expertise to make money and to be doing something that you love? The L stands for love. Yeah. So you've got to be passionate about that. So I feel if you can use that as a yardstick, for instance, to find the niche that you like, and that there are people in there that are going to pay you money for it. And as I said, it's the people who are interested in it that matter. It's not the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So all of this wonderful information we've talked about, people need to go jump on learning from you, from not just the trade shows, but I mean, the riches and niches is it's more the hierarchy, the overarching. People can get that timeless information. You mentioned earlier, Amazon's a good place to buy your book.
Absolutely. Amazon's the best place at this point, unless you order it at a Barnes & Noble, a bookstore. But if you want to, just go onto Amazon. Riches in Niches, How to Make It Big in a Small Market by Susan Friedmann. And I would love to offer a gift to your listeners, Ryan, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
And that is, wherever you are in wanting to write your book, having written your book, partway through the book, let's do a brainstorming session. And I've got an offer of a 25-minute session with me, where we'll just brainstorm whatever it is that you want to do. And you can do that, book an appointment at brainstormwithsusan.com. brainstormwithsusan.com. And Ryan, if you'd be good enough to put that in your show notes, that would be wonderful, because sometimes people are listening to this while they're driving, they're mowing the lawn, they're at the gym. So yes.
I will definitely put all of your contact information in the comments and in the section of the notes, so people can get a hold of you. And chit chat with you. I think that'd be good to make more connections.
Lovely. And yes, feel free to put the Aviva Publishing website. And also we've got Book Marketing Mentors podcast that comes out weekly. And that if you're serious about author marketing, book marketing, you have to listen to that. I interview experts, just like Ryan is doing for his podcast. So yes, and that's a Book Marketing Mentor. So I'll share all those links with you, Ryan. You can put those in the show notes if that works for you.
Yes, please. Anything you want people to have access to, I will happily display for you. Happily.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been amazing.
This has been so fun. I've learned a lot just from chit chatting with you, and I'll probably hit you up in the future when I have a moment, and we'll talk more about my ideas with the niche market. I think your insight will be invaluable. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. Well, everyone, it's been a blast. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Mighty Books podcast, and I hope everyone has a great day. Susan, have a wonderful one.
Thank you.
Are you an author? Do you know someone who is? If so, then message me, Ryan Oliver, at ryanmoliver.com to set up a free appointment to discuss being showcased on the Mighty Books podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Mighty Books YouTube channel and share the link to this and more episodes with your friends and family. Thanks for listening. So long for now. Stay mighty and keep reading.